And I'm back with some more annoying budget Tim Barnett problem of evil stuff. Can it get sillier than it already was? Unfortunately, yes. But will it? Unfortunately, yes.
But if some things are evil, that would mean that some things are good.
Well, no, I think it would imply that there's a definition of good as the opposite of evil. It's essentially two ends of a gradient scale, right? You're not going to have just one end of it. Both ends of it are going to mean something, if you're able to objectively measure things against it. Good and evil are measured in relation to one another. More of one means less of the other. But that doesn't imply, if given a universe where some things fall into the evil end of that scale, that therefore there must exist some sort of balance, that some things must exist that fall into the good end of the scale. Just because, by definition, there is an end of the scale that things could fall into, doesn't actually mean that things do. Unless we're not talking about real things and real actions, but conceivable things or conceivable actions, in which case, okay.
So good and evil exist.
I'm aware of Christian beliefs, yes, which is why I understand why the problem of evil is a problem for you. You believe good and evil objectively exist. If you were an atheist and you didn't believe that, then no problem. But you do, so problem.
But the fact that good and evil exist means that there is a transcendent moral law by which good and evil can be identified. Otherwise, good and evil would not be objectively real.
How long do you think he's going to go on like this before he realizes everything he's saying is totally irrelevant? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? The remaining 20 minutes? Oh, who am I kidding? He's not going to notice at all.
Objective morality, by definition, transcends the individual. Like logic or mathematics, morality doesn't exist in the physical realm. Therefore, it transcends our physical world.
Logic and mathematics don't transcend the physical world any more than language does, social customs do, personal preferences do. Logic and mathematics are attempts by humans to describe the physical world and idealized worlds that we made up in our heads. They're functions of physical brains. In the real world, not Christian Fantasyland. Obviously, what's important here is what's true in Christian Fantasyland, so yes, okay. Morality transcends the individual, transcends the natural world, whatever you want. Objective morality is real, within the context that's important to us for the purpose of the discussion of the problem of evil. So we agree on that for the sake of the argument. Let's move on.
Thus, the fact that good and evil exist entails a transcendent moral law.
You didn't really need to give an argument for that. You could have just said, I'm a Christian, I believe in objective morality, and then I guess went on to explain why that means the problem of evil's a problem for you. It's weird, like you're trying to defend yourself here, but you're making arguments to convince people that you believe the stuff that's necessary for the problem of evil to become a problem. You're kind of working against yourself.
But the existence of a transcendent moral law entails the existence of a transcendent moral lawgiver.
Oh, sorry, did I cut you off before you finished your argument? Okay. Now the problem of evil's a problem for you. Okay, now come up with a reason why it's not, which doesn't involve just pointing off the screen and going, hey, there's atheists over there.
Since morality, by its nature, contains an obligatory character, that is, moral duties, it presupposes the existence of a moral lawgiver.
Very strange way to think about morality. Morality is a thing that humans do to navigate society. It's a bunch of prescriptions that we have in our heads that vary from person to person that we use to judge ourselves and others by. Part biological, part cultural, part personal experience. There's your moral lawgiver if you need one. But again, I know we're talking about Christianity, so you got your moral lawgiver, and your moral lawgiver is God. I'm sure all the Christians acknowledge that's true in Christianity. I also acknowledge that's true in Christianity, so why are you making arguments to try to convince me that this is true in Christianity when I don't know that really anybody would disagree?
That is, a transcendent personal being with the authority to issue commands. Listen to how Professor of Philosophy...
Oh, you've got to be kidding me, dude. You believe morality is what you believe morality is. That's all you actually have to say. Hi, I'm Budget Tim Barnett, and I believe in objective morality from God. That's all that's required for this discussion. Nobody else has to agree with you. You just have to establish, okay, I believe this, and this is why people say the problem of evil applies to me, or to my God, and now let me tell you why it doesn't. And you're not doing that. Instead, you're arguing in favor of objective morality ad nauseum, and when you're finished arguing about it, you bring up some professor to argue about it again. Why? Your video's like 28 minutes long because of this crap. Did nobody at 119Ministries or whatever suggest an editor?
Peter Kreeft puts it. What are moral laws?
Oh, wow, look how long that quote is. You might as well just have played the whole PragerU video. There is absolutely no way I'm bothering with this. Skip.
So, again, the objection to God's existence on the basis of evil is ironic because you have to assume God's existence in order to even make the objection.
Yes, that tends to be how arguments about hypothetical beings work. If God existed, and if he were omnibenevolent and omniscient and omnipotent, and if objective morality were real, there's the argument part. Yes, you assume for the sake of argument that God exists, and then you analyze what that would mean. You think about whether that thing with the properties proposed for it is consistent with itself, and then you realize, no, it's not, and then you say that to the Christian, and then the Christian says, well, you don't even believe in objective morality, so what do you mean it's not consistent? And then you find a brick wall and hit your head against it many, many times.
Without God, the most that we can say when terrible acts are committed, such as the Holocaust or sex slavery, is that we personally don't like it.
Okay, I personally don't like the Holocaust, so if it happens again, I'm more than happy for someone to shoot the perpetrators. Personal preference, but seems to fit with history and actually get shit done. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that that's the attitude of the atheist. What is the relevance of this to the problem of evil? Why do you seem to have the brain of a child?
But we cannot call them evil in any meaningful way.
Oh no, you can call them evil in a very meaningful way. It's meaningful if you have empathy, if you care about other people, if you care about having a functioning society. Basically, if you're anyone other than literally a psychopath, it's incredibly meaningful to you, and to most everyone around you. Human evil is something that humans do to other humans, or animals, whatever. It's an interhuman conflict. The meaningfulness of the term evil, or the term good, comes from the humans involved. Nobody outside the sphere of those affected, meaning living organisms, I guess in the broadest possible scope, has any business dictating what does or does not mean something to those organisms. It's up to them and only them. Honestly, this is on the intellectual level of saying, like, the quality of a politician's performance on housing and energy policy can't be judged as good or bad because an alien didn't come down from outer space and tell you what that means. Or because housing policy doesn't exist in the physical world, and so it transcends the physical universe, and if there's no transcendent housing policy lawgiver, then you can't possibly judge how well the president has done on it. You just can't say he's done badly on it in any meaningful way, even if you define what you mean by badly. It's beyond absurd.
Why? Because we cannot judge something to be evil without an objective standard.
Yeah, we can, and we do. There are variations in every single human being about what's good and what's bad, and we judge according to our own standards constantly. That's kind of a fundamental feature of humanity. We judge stuff. You may deny it, perhaps, but either you lie, or you just lack introspection.
And the only way that standard can exist is if God exists.
I find your reasoning incredibly tortured and clearly done only to support your pre-existing belief. You started from a religious assumption of objective morality and argued your way to a religious assumption of God. But I'm not here to criticize the moral argument. That's not what I wanted to do here. So sure, as I say, for the sake of argument, objective morality, real. God, real. All those omni properties of God, real. Now will you do the problem of evil? Are you even going to do that in this video? Or are you just going to ramble on about how atheists don't have morality or don't have reasons for their morality and try your damnedest to distract from the point?
Thus, without God, the very objection on the basis of evil and suffering is meaningless.
No, I'm not going to explain this again. Oh my God. This is pathetic. How can you repeat this many times and not at some point realize that you're talking about completely the wrong subject? That you're saying your beliefs don't conflict with each other because someone else doesn't believe them.
Only if God exists can we discuss the problem of evil and suffering in any meaningful way.
Only if we assume for the sake of argument that morality is objective, can we argue about contradictions caused by objective morality. We don't need God to exist to examine whether God is self-contradictory and therefore cannot exist in that state. We just need to be able to grant temporarily that he does to argue about it. That's what the word if means. If God exists, and if objective morality exists, blah blah blah, and the blah 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 is within the context of the temporarily granted assumption that God exists. Let's say that you're having an argument about atheistic, subjective, evolved morality. Are you telling me that if you argue about that, if you say, if such a thing existed, it would have this and this and this contradiction, and it just doesn't make sense, and here's why, if you do that, that means you actually believe that there is no God, that morality is subjective, and that it evolved. If you refer to it in an argument, and you point out the contradictions within it, that means you think it's real. Are you sure? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
For a fuller treatment of this argument for God's existence on the basis of objective morality, see our teaching, Answering Atheists, the Moral Argument.
Yeah, I'll be sure to get right on that, teacher.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Oh my god, that was only the first question. I forgot there were more. What do I do? What do I do?
You might say something like, okay, so even if the reality of evil and suffering is not incompatible with the existence of God...
Whoa, hold on, you never even made an argument about that. Why are we suddenly assuming that? What you were arguing about was that for there to be an objective definition of evil, you need God. That was your argument. Whether I grant that or not doesn't matter. It doesn't establish that the reality of evil and suffering is compatible with the existence of God. You were arguing about the definition. This is about the reality of events that fit the definition. You didn't even approach addressing this topic, so obviously I'm not just going to grant you this premise. I mean, that would basically be granting you that you have a solid resolution to the problem of evil and the conversation's over, but you still haven't even addressed the problem of evil. The argument is not magically refuted just by distracting the audience enough.
Surely God cannot be all good and still permit the evil and suffering in our world.
So to rephrase, if evil is not incompatible with God, surely evil is incompatible with God? Who is saying this?
This objection can be answered in a couple of ways. The first answer is that God gave humans the ability to choose whether to do good or evil.
It's really like a treadmill with these people, isn't it? Run as fast as you want, you're still just going to keep covering the same ground.
God's desire is that humans would choose to do good, as Moses said. The problem is that we humans often choose to go against God's will by doing evil.
So there are a bunch of different ways to look at this, all of which I've covered pretty recently. Let's come at it from this angle this time. So, God created the universe exactly how he wanted it to be. God knew everything that would happen within it, right from the start. In fact, before the start, before he created it, he knew what would happen. And he decided, yes, that's the universe I want. The universe with these events is what I want. Click the button, and there's the universe, exactly as I want it. Oh no, what's all this evil in my universe? I didn't want that. That goes so against my will. Do you think they'll buy it?
Instead of choosing life, we choose death. Instead of choosing love and blessings, we choose to do things that hurt others and ourselves.
Choose, choose, choose. In a world where everything was preordained, you choose. Sure. Now here's another question, because I considered coming at this from the sort of Adam and Eve angle, but then I realized I don't really know what kind of Christian you are. I don't know if you believe in Adam and Eve as a literal story, so I wonder if we could approach it from that angle too. Okay, I admit I didn't guess that one. It did of course occur to me to mention Adam and Eve, but I just wasn't going to mention it until I noticed the next clip. Yeah, he believes in Adam and Eve.
In fact, we wrestle with this question of evil and suffering to begin with because of Adam's choice to pursue what was contrary to God's will.
Okay, I'm gonna make it quick here because I just had a big rant about this in the Wretched videos. But how in the hell do you think that anything that happened in the Garden of Eden was against God's will? Aside from the fact of God's omniscience, the fact that he knew already what was gonna happen and he intentionally made the universe in which that would happen, instead of changing something so that wouldn't be the kind of universe he made. Even if we take that part out and set it aside, the Garden of Eden was an inescapable trap for Adam and Eve. What? How can Logicked talk about what happened in the Garden of Eden? He doesn't even believe it happened. So he can't talk about the problems with the story because he doesn't even think it's real. Seriously, that other argument about morality? Just ridiculous, man. But we're past that now. Okay, so the Garden of Eden. A super being with all the power, all the information, creates two ignorant, clueless, naked apes with zero information about the objective good and evil that he made up. He puts an enticing tree of fruit into the garden, and he creates ultimate evil, Satan, this incredible seducer, this prince of lies, to tell Adam and Eve that they should eat the fruit. Don't worry, it's not a big deal. And when they, having absolutely no information, no understanding, when they, as a newborn baby, lose the chess game that they didn't know they were playing against the superhuman entity, not only are they severely punished in an incredibly unfair way, but literally every other human being that ever lives are also punished. Even if they've just been born and have never done anything wrong, they're still considered evil for the actions of someone they've never met, never heard of. It's absurd. It's like setting up a mousetrap, and when the mouse tries to eat the cheese and gets killed by the mousetrap, you go, well, now every other mouse has to die because you did a bad thing trying to eat my cheese. What I'm about to do to all those other mice was your choice. The Adam and Eve story does not work for you as a resolution to the problem of evil. I mean, you can even strip away all the rest of the story and point out the fact that God created Satan before Adam and Eve ate the fruit. God created evil. In no way does any element of this story help you. It makes God look worse. Bringing this up just digs the hole deeper.
The Apostle Paul says that sin entered the world through one man, and with sin came death, sorrow, and suffering.
Yeah, and by the way, who made that rule? If you eat this fruit and learn about good and evil, now sin magically enters the world, and everyone's afflicted with death and sorrow and suffering. Did Adam and Eve make that rule? No. Did Adam and Eve cause the sin? I mean, they didn't make the universe, they didn't make the system. They didn't make it so that eating the fruit triggers all of this horrible stuff. God made it that way. For some reason, Christians always forget that God is the creator. If something was created, he's to blame. He's the creator. That's the whole point.
This is the world we've inherited because of the choice Adam made.
So I'm just curious, if you went to Adam after he ate the fruit, and you said, Adam, now you have the knowledge of good and evil, you have a choice to make. Do you want sin to enter the world, and everyone be afflicted with death and suffering and all these terrible things? Or do you want things to stay nice, and not have people be afflicted by that for no reason? If he's like most people, do you think he'd say that he prefers the death and the suffering and all that being introduced into the world, including upon himself? Or do you think he would choose something else now that he understands the gravity of the choice? Of course, it wouldn't really matter anyway, because it's not really him making the choice, is it? God made the choice. I'm going to make the tree, I'm going to put the devil in it, I'm going to make people, the people are going to eat the fruit of the tree on the devil's instruction. Eating the fruit is going to trigger a cascading effect of the introduction of sin and death and suffering. Yep, that all sounds good to me. And eventually I'll get to do a big ol' awesome flood, too. That should be fun. Plenty of new toys to play with down in hell.
But it wasn't just Adam who made that choice to eat from the tree of knowledge. We all have. The Bible says that we have all sinned.
All of us, really? Well, that's interesting. It's almost as if God created creatures who were doomed to sin, who were so predisposed to it that there's actually no way for them not to do it. But it definitely wasn't God's will that they would, no. He just made them that way for, aesthetics? It's so funny to me how you keep making points against yourself while you try to make points defending yourself. Anyway, I have to say, addressing all this Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden garbage again so soon, it's getting a little bit on my nerves. So I'm gonna stop here, and whether I come back to this or not is very much in question. I suppose if it gets like 150,000 views, then I'll have to think about it, but other than that, we'll see. Thanks for watching. Please, before you go, if you would, give the video a like and click subscribe. Enormous thanks to all of my supporters on every platform. To get videos a bit early, sign up to the email list, list.logicked.com. See you next time.